it's a wonderful, wonderful day. Another day that God has made here, and I want to welcome all the listeners on WFLT to this broadcast that we have moving today. But we always want to make sure that we send out our love and our prayers, and I extend those things to those that may have lost family members this past week or need just a little bit of additional prayer. And so, with that, we always want to begin our broadcast with prayer, and we have Pastor Hawkins with us this morning. And Pastor, if you can be so kind to guide us and lead us in prayer.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Eternal God, we thank you for the opportunity to pray. We thank you for life, health, and strength. We're mindful, Father God, that you have your presence is continuously with us, and yet we're still mindful of those who are suffering the loss of loved ones. Pray their peace, their strength. We pray that you continue to give us the courage, galvanize our community for the betterment in every aspect. We thank you for this broadcast. We pray your wisdom upon us and upon the mayor and all those officials of this city, and that we all come together for the common good for this entire city, and that we may be a model, not only for the state, but even for the nation. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. We have a great show for you this morning. It looks like I lost Dr. Reynolds on the line. We'll try to retrieve him here shortly. But definitely, after celebrating the greatest and oldest African-American holiday yesterday, which was Juneteenth, was a fabulous activity. But we still are dealing with this pandemic that we have here in the city of Flint, as well as our country. This disease or virus, this virus has devastated. COVID-19 has devastated many communities, and Flint has been hit hard as well. But we could have been hit harder, but we've been proactive in our positioning, proactive in our thinking, and proactive in the way that we engage this virus as we watch and listen to the scientists and the doctors across our country, and also our local support base in our physician area. And so with that said, we're still not on the other side of this virus. And so what was concerning to me as the mayor of the city of Flint, as we watch the uptick of these cases throughout our country, we've been very cautiously watching the activities that residents have had in the city of Flint, people not wearing masks, people believing that this virus is done. And so we have Dr. Fur Holden in the absence of Dr. Reynolds. We'll try to get him back on the line here shortly. But Dr. Fur Holden, can you help us understand what is going on and what is currently happening with the virus and where we are right now?
Sure. And good morning, Mayor Neely. So the short version, and Dr. Reynolds likes to put this in phases. So if you look at phases for reopening and the guidance that we're getting from the state right now, we are in phase 4. And there are 6 phases for this. The reason we are in phase 4, we have seen a general decrease in cases in the state of Michigan. But the reason that is good news for us is because we have managed to increase our testing, but the number of cases is going down. So we're doing a better job at, accurately and properly identifying the cases, and things are moving in the right direction. In order for us to stay on that trajectory, it's important that we continue with systematic community-wide testing. It's important that we continue to practice the precautions that we've all been given, both for organizations and institutions, as well as for individuals. I always tell people we're in the middle of this pandemic. It is far from over, but the measure of how well we will do in this and how long we have to deal with it is going to be a function of, can we continue to flatten the curve, and can we continue to do what we have to do as organizations and institutions and as individuals to keep slowing down the spread of the disease. So I just, encourage people as we go back to reopening, now is the time to be more vigilant than ever. This is not the time to change up and get overly relaxed. That will have us, like about 20 other states, start to see an increase. So our job is to continue to flatten the curve with the systematic and individual work that we've already been doing.
Right. And as Dr. Reynolds would say, continue to wear your mask, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and all the things that's necessary in order to protect ourselves and our families through this pandemic. Please, I'm making a plea to our citizens here in the city of Flint and everybody that's listening to this broadcast. We are not through this pandemic yet. We do have to observe all the rules and regulations and advice that the scientists and healthcare professionals have given us. We don't want to see new spikes in these cases for super spreads. And yesterday was one of the disconcerting things that I saw and witnessed, Dr. Verholden, when we were out and about and we saw a lot of people not participating in wearing masks. I think I personally gave out maybe better than 150 masks. The state representative, Cynthia Neely, with her Mask Up campaign, has been asking people to continue to wear their mask, and she gave out maybe a few hundred masks as well at some of the activities, especially the ones in the later evenings where we had young people out. But please recognize that we're still in a pandemic. People are trying to rush to get back to a normal, but there is a new normal amongst us, and we have to observe what that is, and that's to preserve our lives. And so, though that it was a great holiday yesterday and we had a lot of different activities, people did not adhere to a lot of the rules that the scientists have provided. Excuse me. But with that, we still have a lot of things going forth, and that we have to take care of our business. And we online this morning, we have Tony Turner, which was hired by the city of Flint to undergo the 2020 census calculation and help people go through the process of understanding what the 2020 census is, how to go about filling out your 2020 census, and so we can get those most needed resources into our community. Tony, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing great this morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you, and how's everybody on this phone call this morning?
Everybody's doing well. I'm doing well, but I just want because the way that we have the phone set up, it's going to be a little difficult for everybody to answer at once. But
okay.
We understand your courtesy to them. But the 2020 census, please help us understand where we are and what we need to do moving forward very quickly as it relates to people filling out their 2020 census form and how important it is.
All right. Well, the city of Flint, we're currently at about 48% response rate, and we're right in line with other places of light communities such as Saginaw, Detroit, Muskegon, Cincinnati. But we're moving up incrementally because we have a very vigorous radio campaign that's in place. Our last report this past Friday, our radio campaign drove 27,000 folks to the census website where they could fill out the form. So we have a very good campaign in light of the COVID restrictions of yet reaching out to those hardest to count individuals and families within the city of Flint. But what I would like to really focus on this short time is really explain to people how they can complete their form. On April 1st, everybody in the city of Flint received a paper form. And usually under normal circumstances, under a normal, a lot of people have misplaced that form or didn't know what it was. But because the Census Bureau has suspended operations and they haven't started operations in our area yet, our area census office is not open. As a matter of fact, the regional center in Chicago is now doing a soft open. It's going to be hard for people to get a paper form or a paper questionnaire. But we have two other ways that you can respond. I'm going to talk about other things that the city, real quick, what the city is getting ready to do to help people respond and fill out their questionnaire. You can respond online, and you can respond by phone. If you want to respond online, you can do it over your, a lot of people don't know, you can do it over your cell phone, your iPad, your tablets, and all you have to do is go to 2020census.gov, and it'll take you right to the place where you can respond online. And a lot of people say, well, I don't have that card. They say I have to have a card with a code number. Well, that is what you need, but if you go online or by phone, it will match your name up with your address. It's going to ask you your name. It's going to ask you your address, and it will match you up in the system. So even if you don't have the code that was sent along with the paper form, you can yet go online or go on the phone and fill out the census questionnaire. 10 minutes, 10 years. So if you want to respond online, 2020census.gov. But if you want to respond by phone, which is very easy, you can call 844-330-2020. That's 844-330-2020. And I want to
Tony,
say this, there's a lot of,
one more time with that phone number, but this time go slower. You went pretty fast with that. So we got the
oh,
844.
okay.
Go ahead.
844-330-2020.
Okay. And the thing about it, Tony, as we talk about this and the importance of getting the census filled out, and you talked about, people don't have their paper form anymore, that there's a couple different avenues in which they can go to fill out their 2020 census form. And why don't you, we know on this call how important it is for our 2020 census, because life has been, we have been distracted, and life has been interrupted in our community and also our country through this pandemic. And so many things that we have come accustomed to having in front of us, we still expect those things and we desire those things, but we have been distracted and we have lost our focus. But please tell people why it's important for them to finish their 2020 census form.
Well, the main thing, this is 10 years of our future. We talk about roads and Medicaid and Pell Grants. Well, if we put it into a situational awareness of how much money we stand to gain or lose, think about it. Right now, if the city of Flint does a complete count, this is like 100% of everybody in the city of Flint County over the next 10 years, we're talking about bringing in $1.7 trillion into the city of Flint. This is not just city budgets or budgets for policing or fire, but this is budgets to Hurley Hospital. So when you go in the hospital and you have insurance, the social worker comes to you and fills out paperwork so that you can be covered. This is budgets to like Hamilton Healthcare and a lot of services that we take for granted that we don't know. We have to understand that there's 138 federal funded programs, from hot lunches to Head Start to schools, that's funded by the federal government. So if we don't get if we don't get a full count, we're talking about $1.7 trillion. Now that will change the landscape, and it will affect us not only at the city level, it will affect our everyday life, our quality of life. So it's important for people in the midst of all these distractions, and they are legitimate distractions, to understand that this 10 minutes is going to be critical, very critical, not just for us today, but it's going to be critical for our children, our children's children over the next 10 years, because once those numbers go to the president next year, usually it's December of this year, but it's going to be April when the president, whoever that may be, gets these numbers, and then it goes to Congress for budget allocations. If you aren't counted, then you really don't exist, because the government, at the local municipality, all the way to the state and the federal, even when businesses want to put a new business in, the data that they look at first is the census data. So it's very important that everyone understand that if they want more blight money, if they want more money to fix roads, they have to fill out this form, because everything about the census touches everything about our life.
Right. And one thing about it is, as the mayor of this community and the leader of this community, one thing that I have to do is maintain focus and maintain direction for our community. And we have done a fantastic job with the distractions that we have, which is like a pandemic or economic or a social movement as it relates to the social ills from the dominant tendencies of our society. But the thing of it is that if anybody's not telling you or trying to focus you on the things that's important to move our community forward, they're forfeiting the responsibility for our young people and our children and for our future. Census is important. Getting out to vote is important. Our health and life and welfare is important. We need to stay focused on the things that's germane to be able to improve and increase the quality of life for us and our neighbors and our families and our friends. Stay focused. And so with that, when Tony, you just reported that we are still less than 50% reporting in for the 2020 census, that means all hands on deck at this point. All hands on deck at this point.
And,
go ahead,
and to that point, and to that point, as we move from stage 4 to stage 5, and hopefully stage 6 in this pandemic, we're looking at opening up what we call pop-up questionnaire assistance centers. And once we get the city census crew online and onboarded, these will be pop-up places where it may be a store like Shorthorn one day. The next day the crew may be at a different store or at a different location. So we're going to have several pop-ups, but also we're bringing online questionnaire assistance centers at local places such as Asbury Church, Bethel, Hasselbring, St. Luke's New Life Center, that would be permanent, where people that's in that community, and these are hard to count communities that these sites are at. And we're looking at those sites where they can go in at any time, and there will be tablets, computers available to them, and even phones available to them to do their census questionnaire. So we're going to be doing a boots on the ground effort to make sure that we at the level of the city, in conjunction with our great partners at the Community Foundation and those M&A grantees, that we make sure that everybody has access to complete the form and get their questions answered.
Right, and some of the communities in which was just enumerated by Tony early on, Flint, Saginaw, Detroit, these are heavily populated communities of color. And so as we move with the social movement saying that Black Lives Matter or Our Lives Matter in total in these communities, these traditionally underserved communities, we are essentially sometimes, if we don't engage in this process, we will ultimately not be served with the resources that's necessary that comes from the federal government. And so we have to be the progress we seek, or the justice we seek as it relates to economic partnerships with our federal government. And so we have to be able to do these things. And so, Tony, do you know about the data that's coming in from communities not like Flint, Saginaw, Detroit, or Pontiac?
Well, you actually touched on a very important point. I see that data every day, and they're trending right along with us right as we speak. We're working with the state of Michigan, and they're the state complete count committee, and the state is bringing some extra resources in here to help us, reach these folks. But what you just mentioned was very true, because in 2010, approximately 800,000 Black and brown people were not counted. So think about that. That's like $1.4 billion every year that did not come back to our communities. And I was in one of the wards, and it goes back to the importance of why this census is so important. Ever since the census started, Black and brown communities, let's just be more specific, African American communities have been undercounted. And that goes back to, like what you said, Mr. Mayor, voting. And when we look at the forces that's at play that's trying to take away our voting rights, these are the same forces that are discriminately inhibiting our ability to count our inner neighborhood, because voting and census go hand in hand. Voting is the exercise of our power. Census is the funding of our power. So when you have a ward, let's say you have a ward that maybe only saw a 46% response rate, and then you look at the conditions of that ward, it's a lot of bright people. Have to understand that in the Black and brown communities, when they're not counted, the mayor or the township supervisor, whoever, and that council, whoever that may be, have to take the money that was only allocated for 42% of the respondents and spread those resources to cover the other 58%. So that's why it's so very critical that we understand when we look at, because I have people say, well, Tony, Flushing is doing so well. Well, we can't compare Flushing to Flint, because one of the things that really inhibits Black and brown communities from voting and looking at it from a data standpoint is housing and housing situations. Because when we look at Black and brown communities, a lot of our African American families are living in poverty. Poverty is an indicator of why households are so difficult to enumerate. And then when you look at housing insecurity, 1 in 4 African Americans are without home, or they're underhoused. So when you put economic issues along with housing insecurity, which you don't find in more affluent communities, you get a perfect formula for undercount. And then in that undercount, you add on to that a lot of people that are in these positions. If you do get them counted, they may not tell you that they have children because they don't want you in their business. So you may have a household, and the parent may say, yeah, it's me and my husband, or me and my significant other, but they don't tell you about the other 8 children that's in the home. So those 8 children don't get counted. So that means that's funding for each one of those children that do not come back to Flint. So this is some of the things that we're looking at that are specific and unique to African American and brown and Hispanic communities. This historical undercount, and that's in 2010, We wrestled against it. 2000 wrestled against it, but now in 2020, not only are we wrestling against the historic data that tells us why and where, we also have all the issues of the pandemic, the water crisis, and that is further distracted. So our job at the city level is working with our partners to keep us all on task, keep our messaging the same, and making sure that we're reaching every corner. Because right here in the city of Flint, our affluent communities, like Ward 5, Ward 7, Ward 8, those downtown communities, they're trending very well. Their response rates are up in the 50s. But what we have to really focus on, and where we're going to be focused on and have focused on, is wards 1, 2, 3, and 4, those northern and northeastern districts where we're getting very low response rate. And that's why we are now in the midst of engaging our youth, because now I'm looking at the raw aggregate data and compiling that. And what it tells me and shows me is that our youth are the main group that's not responding.
Let me interrupt you here because I think I just lost another caller. I want to make sure that we're still broadcasting on a radio broadcast. And so I want to make sure we still have a radio link here. So with that said, if you guys are viewing on Facebook, and if you please notify us if we're not broadcasting. Sister D, if you're monitoring, please let me know. We still have our radio connection. I'm monitoring that. But Pastor Hawkins, are you still with us? Pastor Hawkins? Okay.
Yeah, you're still broadcasting on TV.
Okay. Well, not just the Facebook, but okay. I'm just talking about the radio broadcast. So please bear with us. We got about 8 more minutes on our radio broadcast, but I think I've lost Pastor Hawkins. Pastor Hawkins, are you there? Okay, we lost Pastor Hawkins, but Minister Vic, let's chime in with Minister Vic. Minister Vic, I know you're with us via another medium, but now we have a call to action with this all call to action for making sure that this 2020 census gets done, and so we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we get this done. So is it a way that we can get through our faith-based community and just say we can do this? And so we're going to get Pastor Hawkins back in to help answer with this question because we lost him through that medium as well. But Pastor Hawkins, this is to you and Minister Vic. Is there a way that we can get a call to action for pastors of our more than 400 churches inside the city of Flint to be able to say that this 2020 census is a priority and let's focus in on that? Is there a possibility?
Absolutely, Mayor. I think not only is it a possibility, Tony was saying, it's critical, extremely critical. I will begin to spread that information, even if there's a standard letter that could be sent or anything that would show the crucial importance of it. I would be willing to help put that out. Through all of my channels. I think it's extremely important because, again, whether or not everybody's convening just yet, they still have access to membership. And so I will definitely help with that and start on it as soon as possible.
All right. And so, Mr. Vic, I want you to respond to that as well. When we talk about a call to action here, because this is very important because those that's not focusing in on what is going to empower and improve our communities is further distracting us. And so me as coming into this administration, I have jumped on a hand grenade trying to provide a level of leadership in many different capacities in which it was not engaged. The 2020 census count had not begun the enumeration process or the planning process or even the foundation before we got here. And usually that has started a long time out. But Minister Vic, go ahead and speak to what we need to be doing moving forward as communities of color.
Absolutely. I believe the statement made by Pastor Hawkins, and given the fact that the faith-based community has a standing audience, not only on Sundays, but on Wednesdays, even though most of us are functioning virtually now, we're using Zoom meetings, we're using a variety of different, we're using Facebook, a variety of different forms of social media. But the very fact that our call as church is to preserve life and to enhance life, it's incumbent upon the church to be engaged and involved in every aspect of it.
because it impacts our church, it impacts our communities and so forth, economically, socially, politically, and otherwise. And it also impacts our quality of life.
Right. So we want to just put that number out there once again, 844-330-2020. 844-330-2020 for your 2020 census. And we'll be broadcasting more on that. But I want to spend the last few minutes on one announcement. Attorney Trishelle Young, State Representative Cynthia Neely, and also Judge Deborah Thomas will be picking up the mantle from where I left off with the expungement programs, teaching people how to expunge their record. That expungement webinar will be held on Thursday, June 25th at 7 p.m. and we'll bring more detail about that. So look for that, because many people have felonies on their record and they're trying to find out how to get it expunged. That is a workshop in which my wife and I put on for the last 5 years, 2 workshops every year. But now State Representative Cynthia Neely, Attorney Trishelle Young, and Judge Deborah Thomas will continue with that on that workshop webinar on June 25th at 7 p.m. So make sure you get that information out to your people or friends and family that may want to get the felonies off their record. But back to Deborah Furholden, Dr. Furholden, as we looked at all the events that happened yesterday, was a great day. And in the city of Flint, moving forward, Juneteenth will be recognized as a holiday, a City of Flint holiday. I will recognize that as a holiday with all the trimmings of providing a day off for our workers here in the City Hall, and also recognizing that citywide as the oldest African American holiday. We will officially recognize that as a holiday in the city of Flint. But my concern, Dr. Furholden, was that there are, though it's the oldest African American holiday, and we really preach on the mantle of unity, but there are 4 different events. And do you have any insight to that, or why is it that we cannot have a massive one event, or those things that we had several events, but the unity portion? Dr. Furholden?
Well, so that's an interesting question, but, there are some historic events that I think have happened in Flint for, quite a long time. And so I don't actually see it as so much of a barrier. There is some real possibility in people coming together, but the fact that people continue to elevate this important, sort of moment and day in African American history, I think we want to continue to encourage, the celebration. And I really acknowledge you for elevating this to be an actual holiday in the city of Flint. And there's a whole movement about to have this be a nationally recognized holiday. So yeah, there's, it's like 6 on one hand, half dozen on the other. We appreciate, people coming together, and our goal is always to bridge better and create unity, especially around these celebrations. But one thing I will say, and having bumped into you at one of the events at the park, is that there are a lot of our people who are really being great about, practicing the physical distancing, even at these events that were masked up. And similarly, there were people who were not honoring those protocols. So I think these also give us an opportunity to better hold each other to account. And I thought it was cool to see the mayor out handing out masks, encouraging people to mask up. So in an ideal world, we could better unify these events. But I think what's most important is that we keep it at the forefront of both our city and our nation's attention, because it is an important day for us.
Right. With that, we're going to end our radio broadcast here. I want to keep you guys listening, tuned in to Facebook for our Facebook Burst program. But I love you, Mom. God bless all of you guys out in listening world. Please stay safe. Recognize what the scientists and the health professionals are doing. Back to you, Sister D, and the WFLT listeners. God bless all of you, and stay tuned for the radio, for the Facebook Burst program, and we'll get everybody back on one line here. Thank you, and God bless.
We thank you for tuning in to the Community Update broadcast with Flint's Mayor, the Honorable Sheldon Neely. Please tune in again next
Okay, guys, I'm going to add Pastor Hawkins, I'm gonna add you back into the call. So I'm gonna drop you off the cell phone. I'm gonna add you back into the call queue, and then go for Dr. Reynolds as well. Okay, Pastor. All right. Stand by, guys. For let me add these other callers back in. Hold 1 second.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yep, I can hear you. Hold on. I'm gonna add you. Okay, I'm gonna add Dr. Reynolds back in. Hold 1 second.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Reynolds, we're gonna add you back into the conversation. Hold 1 second. Okay, we have Dr. Reynolds back, and so we're getting ready to start and begin our Facebook Burst program on today, day before the eve of Father's Day, and also the day after the oldest African American holiday. I want to welcome you, Dr. Furholden, Dr. Reynolds, Pastor Hawkins, and also Tony Turner from our 2020 census calculation program from the city of Flint. And so, Dr. Reynolds, you missed us. Your call dropped, so you didn't get a chance to join us for the radio broadcast, but you are with us now for the Facebook Burst program. So, Dr. Reynolds, we were talking about the events that happened yesterday and the gatherings that happened yesterday, and we want to make sure that we have a great and clear understanding in your role as the health advisor to the city of Flint, in which you are a medical physician by trade and profession in a retired form, but you have practiced for many years, and you were the CEO of Mott Children's Health Center as well. And so where are we at with the pandemic, and what is the recommendations that we need to be sharing with our viewers and listeners?
Yes, let me be perfectly clear. We are in the middle phase of a pandemic, which doesn't mean we're halfway through or almost through. We don't know where we are because this is a new virus that's very infectious, and so that we have to be careful because we are learning as we go along. So as we learn, what we have learned is we should be as safe as possible. And that does mean, unfortunately, avoiding large gatherings, that we should wear masks, and that we should wash our hands. Now, here is a way to minimize your risk if you are so moved to participate in a large gathering. Number one, wear your mask. Carry your hand sanitizer. Number two, you may want to bring some eye protection in case chemical irritants are used by anybody in that situation. You should bring your own water. The organizers should mark areas so small groups can be at least 6 feet apart, maintaining that physical distancing. And when I say small groups, I'm talking about members of a household who are already residing together, or people that you know, so that in case someone is tested and is positive, contact tracing can be followed through. In other words, you know the names and the telephone numbers of the people you are at the demonstration with. Okay, another idea is supplying ropes, which can be knotted at 6-foot intervals to allow people to march together while maintaining spacing. And I guess you should say you should have bail funds for your friends who don't know how to obey instructions, or the instructions are hard to follow. Ideas like the caravan yesterday are appropriate because people who know each other are in one vehicle, and that's a modification of physical distancing. But the whole point is we are at risk. Now, who should not go? Well, people who are at high risk, and that includes people who are over the age of 60, people who have chronic medical conditions. It's important that we protect ourselves so that we are here for the next Juneteenth, so that we are here for ongoing activities, so we can share our wisdom. Sometimes you have to look at the overall risk for everybody, and then onto that you have to add a layer of, this is my personal risk.
Right. And so, we speak to those things, and we have to be the justice in which we seek in many conditions. And I always talk about self-inflicted wounds in our community, our underserved communities, but we first have to be the justice in which we seek. And I did hear a little bit of that Dr. Reynolds 1960s radical, because we have no dollars and cents put together or commingled for any particular activity that will be beyond peaceful. But in the city of Flint, we have been leading the way throughout the nation. We have been very proactive in our engagements with all things. And even yesterday, me declaring Juneteenth to be a city of Flint holiday moving forward is a part of our proactive thinking, and the way that you have guided this community in your advisory capacity to make sure that we have saved lives. And with that, we still have Dr. Verholden here, and also Pastor Hawkins, which were a part of the Blue Ribbon panel to talk about the reactivation and the opening of the city of Flint. I did not get a chance to talk a little bit about that on the radio broadcast, but we are looking at reactivating City Hall in the second week of July. So with that, with the best recommendations that you have provided, Dr. Reynolds, and also our Blue Ribbon Committee, talking about how we're going to re-engage and do things safe inside the city of Flint, is very, very pivotal about how we're going to move forward. But more pivotal is about the resources that we can get and for the next decade. And we have Tony Turner talking about the 2020 census. And Tony, very quickly and succinctly, this is the question that is going to be asked by many people now that we are trying to refocus and recalculate our residents to say that 2020 census is important. We need all hands on deck. How can they go about filling out their 2020 census form if they have not did it by paper and they cannot find the original application for the filing in their pile of mail? How can they go about doing it now?
Very simply, you can go on your website, 2020census.gov, and when you go there, it will give you three choices. Right now, how to respond by mail is not an option because the Census Bureau is shut down and doing a gradual reopening. But they can go to that website and they can respond by phone by calling 844-330-2020. And you do not have to, when you respond online or you respond by phone, you don't have to have that code that came on that postcard. And many people didn't know what it was, they threw it away. It will ask you for your name and your address, and that will in the system will find your questionnaire and get you into the queue to complete your census form questionnaire. And it's 10 minutes, and it's not intrusive. It doesn't ask you for social security numbers or nothing personal. All they want to know is how many people in your home, and especially for Black and Brown community, don't forget to let us know to count those children that are in your home also.
Right. And Pastor Hawkins, all hands on deck. More than 400 churches are inside the city of Flint. All hands on deck. If you can listen to this, let's maintain our focus. Let's refocus and recalculate, and let's sharpen our blades as it relates to going forth. But Pastor Hawkins, can we get the faith-based community and the faith-based leaders on deck talking about these very important issues, especially the 2020 census?
Yes, absolutely, Mayor. And again, I believe that it's extremely critical, particularly when we start talking about how it seems like in the Black community that the funding source does not reach us in the capacity that we desire. One of the things is to start to make sure that we get the churches involved so that they can get Christians involved, and we can really spread that information so that we know that at least we're at the table as it relates to funding. So I would definitely be willing to take any information and to put it all in my contact and give us some great contact, because even though we are not technically meeting the capacity that we were, we know that we still have access to our membership, we know we have access to Zoom, Facebook, all of these other outlets that we use. And so I think it's extremely crucial that we can let every pastor in this aid make sure that everyone gets information and that they will fill it out.
Okay, with that, you have a lot of background noise going on. So I'm going to kick it off to Dr. Verhoeven, which has a lot of golf clubs in her golf bag because she can hit the ball from many different places. And so, but shifting gears and talking about the advisory committee to the police department that's being placed together. And we're going to talk about how we're moving the name away, because it's not about a name, it's not about a brand, but it's about a movement moving forward and advancing our community. And I will not be distracted, or my focus will not be dulled by anything that may come into way of that, trying to improve the quality of engagements with our police department and our local residents. We will be at the top. We will be moving forward to that. And so with the Blue Ribbon panel, and Pastor Hawkins, you chair, and also Dr. Verhoeven is a part of that panel as well, going forth to select the rest of the members that's going to be that advisory to our police department, the citizen engagement task force, engaging our police department in order to make sure that we do the very best things for our residents. And this is with a focus on how they engage with people of color. And so it's going to be primarily that, talking about how we can de-escalate and better engage our public. And so with that, we will keep our focus, and regardless of whatever branded name people are getting a little tense about, we won't engage in that. And so we're just going to go forth with the activity and also the improvement of that engagement. So Dr. Verhoeven, you performed a lot of this thing back in Maryland in your past location before you came back home. And I'm gonna say home because you are a Flintstone to Flint. So tell us about the engagement and how we're looking at focusing on that and to improve our engagements with law enforcement and residents.
Well, I think the key here is that it be participatory and that it not be something that's done to us, but something that we create and build together. So this whole process, that it was an open call, for people to raise their hand and say, I'm interested. And I know you're still in the sort of process of vetting and making those selections. And I really appreciate the fact that you said, hey, we're going to sort of stay flexible and a little bit open to exactly what we call it. I think the underlying mission is pretty clear, right? We are looking for equity and justice and fairness, and for our police to be our partners in serving and protecting, and not be a source of harm or detriment to the community. And so what we learned in Baltimore basically is, if you do that in a participatory, engaged fashion, if you actually have the commitment and the will from local government and the police department for the transformation that we all know is needed, there's a real opportunity to move to a model where we are working together for the greatest and common good of the community, instead of being policed, by the people who are really in place to serve and protect. So I see tremendous potential with this, and I'm looking forward to how we move forward and how we engage people. And for the people who've sort of been complaining about, how it's going, well, it's going, and so people should raise their hand and go through the process if they actually want to be involved. And I also imagine there'll be other ways for people to get involved as this develops.
Right, and we will always welcome those of like thinking, and that like thinking is moving our community forward in a positive, unified way. But moreover is that our African American community, and when we look at all the things that we have to fight through and champion our way through, but we do have a responsibility to also look at our self-inflicted wounds in our own areas, and we have to perfect that. We have to be able to do the things that's necessary in our house in order to be able to strengthen our bodies and move forward with that. And so, Dr. Reynolds, I key back to you because you are the most seasoned member on this dialogue right now. And you saw many different things from North Carolina to New York and also the state of Michigan. So, Dr. Reynolds, the level of unity, and where do we need to go to be able to perfect this level of unity and unified efforts to get us to the next place? Because we do have a lot of individuals in our community that may not be of like thinking and provides a level of disruption to where we need to go. And so right now, where we need to be razor sharp is in our community, we need to be maintaining focus because we are on a precipice on many different directions of falling over the edge. And so how can we maintain our focus and use all the tools that we have available to us to move forward?
Well, first of all, we must learn to, before we react, we need to stop and reflect in those circumstances where we have the luxury to do so that you're not reacting out of just emotion, but you're reacting out of checking out the situation, looking and seeing who's really working with you, who's working against you, and who needs to be developed in order to be more effective. So what I'm talking about is organizing our minds, but also organizing our friends and those people with whom we have influence, so that we're not just jumping out there doing random things. Now, if a comes to your mind and you want to implement a strategy, it's good to go back to that group that you have organized for positive action and talk it over. You know, it's making a decision is one thing. Knowing when to act on that decision is another thing. And knowing when to change your strategy or tactic is the third thing. So this is, I hate to make the analogy, but it is like warfare of the minds. And if you don't use your mind, you will lead yourself and our people and our allies down the wrong path. For example, if you're at a demonstration and you see someone carrying something that is illegal or dangerous or engaging in an activity that threatens other people, you got to tell somebody in the crowd. I've seen in some instances where demonstrators have told people, no, you will not light that fire. Yes, you better get out of here. And who are you? And why are you here? Because there are people who are sent amongst us to provoke situations that compromise our mission. So the word is discipline, reflection, and action.
Yeah, go ahead. We're just trying to make sure that we keep our connectivity to our Wi-Fi here. But moreover, when we're looking at these type of things, and we're saying, Dr. Reynolds and Pastor Hawkins, I'm going to lean back to you for the Citizens Advisory to our police department committee that we're structuring right now. And when we look at where we are currently, and so is it fair to say that people usually come into communities of color and exploit the communities of color for their monetary or social reasons? And have you guys seen any of those things, or do you kind of understand that could possibly happen in communities like Flint?
Yes, sir. And I know it's Dr. Furholden for that too, Mayor.
Dr. Furholden, the ball has just been tossed to you.
Say that again.
I said, oh, well, I was saying the exploitation of communities of color, for monetary reasons or social reasons. I mean, is that fair to say that it happens across our globe as well as here in this community? Is that a fair statement to make, that sometimes those things are communities of color are exploited for different reasons.
Yeah, it's the complete extraction of wealth. If you want to cripple a community, you take its soldiers off the field. And that's, I think, what we've seen with the full-on assault and attack on African-American men being, unfairly, targeted by the criminal justice system. You look at, adjudication for same crime, same everything. They just throw the book at us, and then they, over police us. And then, a lot of cities actually include in their budgets, they build into their budgets a certain amount of resources being generated from tickets, searches and seizures, et cetera. And it is extraction out of communities. It's plunder, and it should be criminal. And if it's going to happen, it shouldn't be disproportionately targeted to our communities. It just makes us further vulnerable and further marginalized. But it is wealth extraction, and it should be criminal. And it happens all over the place. And again, if you go back to one of the things that we could potentially look at with this Citizens Advisory Council, we can actually look at the data and see what that stuff looks like. Because the sad thing and the malignancy that's built into it is oftentimes pathways for promotion for police officers are hinged on some of these metrics. So there's almost like systematic encouragement for plunder and extraction. And so I think we can start to transform this system. And people have been talking about defunding the police. I really think what we're talking about is a reorganization and a reset of the value that the police are operating under. But there's many, many pieces to that system that need to be dismantled in order for the kind of work that we want to do to really take hold. So these perverse incentives for police officers to be a part of a system of extraction and plunder, we got to get rid of that.
Absolutely. And that's what a part of our advisory council to the police department here in this community, and also the mindset in that particular space, announcing the oldest African-American holiday will be recognized here inside the city of Flint. Now we move forward with that thinking, but for the past 5 years, myself and State Representative Cynthia Neely, we put forth a restorative justice meetings and a campaign on that level of restorative justice, because we know that African Americans are excessively incarcerated and criminalized. And so coming out of incarceration or returning citizens, we wanted to make sure that they're restored and have a level of restorative justice. But now the mantle has been taken up by Attorney Trishelle Young, State Representative Cynthia Neely, and also Judge Deborah Thomas out of the Circuit Court in the Detroit area to continue to do that work of restorative justice. And they're going to have a workshop showing people how to expunge their records, their criminal records. And that will happen on Thursday, June 25th at 7 p.m. It's going to be a webinar, and people will be educated on how to go about expunging their records without the high cost of retaining a lawyer. You have a lawyer, a judge, and a state representative that's going to be there to assist and guide people through that process, so we can be restored to the justice that we have as citizens, fully engaged in this country. And so that workshop is going to happen once again Thursday, June 25th, and that's Attorney Trishelle Young, State Representative Cynthia Neely, and also Judge Deborah Thomas that's going to be performing that. And that is part of how we get those soldiers back into our community and restore them and their rights fully to them after returning from activity or incarceration of being incarcerated. So with that said, we have a couple more minutes, and I do want to go back to Tony Turner, because we want to talk about, again, the importance and all hands on deck for the 2020 census. And Tony, once again, how can they contact us, and how can communities, faith communities participate and assist you in getting a full count for the city of Flint?
Yes, one thing I had mentioned, anyone can reach me at 810-309-4446, and I can get information. Right now I'm ordering census promotional items such as backpacks and water bottles, pens, lanyards, things like that for events. Also for the faith community, and I appreciate Pastor Hawkins leading this up. We can get them faith-based kits that is centered around the faith-based and has census information that is particularly written for the faith-based community. So those are just simple things that we could do on a local level. But the most important thing we can do is integrate the census into our conversations with our families, our loved ones, our friends when we're out speaking with one, because this will be and is the most critical census enumeration in the history of Flint. We must get a perfect count everyone where they are at, and especially now as we're moving into the second phase of enumeration, where we're working with the state and the U.S. Census Bureau on how we're going to work together to make sure that when the enumerators hit the street, that they are going to these homes and that they are knocking on doors, because we have some COVID issues that the federal government is working through on how they will approach these homes. It's going to be very important that each of us make sure that census is an integral part of our conversation, and we help people understand to own it, because every part of our life will be affected by a census count. So that's the most important thing you do. And like I said, anyone can contact me, 810-309-4446. You can reach me by email at census@cityofflint.com, and you can go and respond to your questionnaire by phone at 844-330-2020 or online at 2020census.gov.
All right, Dr. Reynolds, keeping safe and keeping our health intact, what do we need to continue to do?
Well, number one, if you're on any medication, make sure you have enough. Get your refills. If you're due for a checkup or a physical exam, do that. Contact your doctor. If you don't have a doctor, call Hamilton Family Health Network or the Genesee Health Plan, and they will help you get connected with insurance resources and appropriate places to go for treatment. Number three, make sure you keep up on your immunizations. In August, the new influenza or flu vaccine will be available. You can go to the health department, you can go to your doctor, you can go to the pharmacies, and you can get those immunizations. There are specific immunizations for children, and there are immunizations for adults. And ask somebody if you don't know. Those are the main things I'd like to leave with folks. And lastly, if you are not feeling well, don't be afraid to call your doctor. And if it's urgent and emergent, do not be afraid to go to the emergency room. They have set up procedures so that you will be kept safe. If you have to be admitted, they have procedures where you will not come in contact with other people. They will do things to reduce your risk. It's better to be alive and taking a reasonable risk by doing appropriate action than doing nothing and sitting at home.
Well, we want to do that, make sure that we're safe, and we have a lot of priorities. We're looking at reactivating City Hall in the second week of July. We want to make sure we maintain our focus and our discipline on these very important things. Stay focused out there on really what's germane to improving the quality of life for you and your family, your neighbors, and your friends. It's very important. And Dr. Reynolds, you have always been a great guiding light and resource for the city of Flint. We want to thank you for that. Dr. Furholden and Pastor Hawkins, thank you for being a part of our Blue Ribbon panel, and as well as our advisory council to our Flint Police Department in order to make sure the citizens' engagement with law enforcement is more positive. And so with that, 2020 census, Tony Turner, we will be continuing to do this every week. You will be hosting the community update and also the City of Flint show here next week, talking about 2020 census. It's going to be all hands on deck for 2020 census. Dr. Furholden, I'm going to give you the last word prior to, then the prayer from Pastor Hawkins, and then we'll close out. And then I'll let everybody go out there and shop for a nice Father's Day gift. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers. And so hopefully I get another pair of socks or a belt that fits this year. I hope my children are listening. So Dr. Furholden, give us some encouraging words moving us forward into our weekend. Dr. Furholden.
Yeah, I just encourage everybody to continue to stay safe during the season. We already know what it'll take and what people need to practice. I think, on the heels of Juneteenth and now coming into Father's Day, it really is a time for reflection. It's a time for acknowledgement. It's a time for honoring people. So to all the dads on this call, I say to you all, happy Father's Day. To all the amazing men who father children that are not their biological children, who mentor them, who love them, who support them, who stand for them, I honor and salute you as well. And we're on the path. Like, Flint is a great city, and the work that we continue to do is just gonna reaffirm that. So again, everybody just stay safe, stay encouraged, and know that we've got your back.
Absolutely. And Pastor Hawkins, if you can close us out with prayer for our oldest African American holiday in our country, Juneteenth, and also Father's Day, being the eve of Father's Day. We're cradled right between both, so this should be a joyous time for us here in the city. And I will continue to lead aggressively, being proactive and not distracted. So, how they say on Facebook, I need some new haters. I need some new Facebook haters because the old ones got tired. But that's okay. Pastor Hawkins, a prayer.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Thank you, Father God, again for all that you allowed us to do. Thank you for the show, for this informative information. And we pray that you will continue to just strengthen us as a city, as a community, as a nation, and as we would honor such times as Juneteenth, as we would honor such times as Father's Day. Let us remember to honor one another in every aspect, that we continue to uphold each other, encourage each other, and that we would offer a sign of peace to one another, so particularly as we look at our Black community. And as we come together as one, we know that things will work out so much good, so much for the better. We thank you. Continue to bless us in all that we do, and that we continue to look to you for our guidance and for our strength. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Next week it'll be Tony Turner talking about 2020 census, and I was just joshing about the Facebook people there. We want to make sure that we bring all people together with a united mind, trying to move our communities forward, and that's what the thrust that this office will always continue to be. Next week I'll be off celebrating. Dr. Reynolds, you'll like this. My 28th wedding anniversary. And we'll be out there celebrating. Yes, I got married very, very, very young. So I don't preserve, well, but I am still a young guy, but I've been with my beautiful bride for 28 years. Next week, we'll be celebrating.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. We're working to catch up with you, Dr. Reynolds, but we're always going to be trailing behind, but you have provided a great example in your leadership as a man and as an African-American man, and now as an African-American man in the leadership role for the city of Flint. And I want to thank you for providing those measurements of what we all need to be and try to accomplish as we look forward to Father's Day. Fathers, be encouraged that God could ever give us His life to be caring for our children. And so with that said, God bless you guys. I love you, Mom. I'll be over to the house shortly to take care of my list that you have for me. Thank you guys for joining us today. God bless you. See you in 2 weeks. Tony Turner, you're on tap. 2020 census, all hands on deck. God bless you.
Yes, sir. God bless you.
All right.